Nikky Smedley is an actor, dancer, choreographer, television director, and producer, best known for her role as Laa Laa in the BBC children's show Teletubbies. And she's here with us now. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Yeah, of course you'd say that. Now, first of all, just so we're not wasting our time here with an imposter, can you just prove that you are actually Laa Laa by doing her voice for us?
Please, you have to say please and be very polite. The Teletubbies, they're very polite people.
Yeah, I think that pretty much proves that you are her then. And I guess I'll say thank you now, seeing as I forgot to say please the first time.
Yeah.
So we'll start chronologically, I suppose. How did you first get into all the acting and dancing and creative stuff in the first place?
I was just a natural born show-off, really. Right from the word go, I kind of like many children, or certainly little girls, I was sent to do ballet classes when I was 3 or 4 or something. And we did a performance around Sing a Song of Sixpence with the blackbirds baked in a pie. Yeah. And I remember our teacher saying, and there'll be one very special blackbird, and I wonder who it will be. And I just put my hand up and kind of went, well, me, obviously. and then, which is shameful, I know, but what do you know when you're 3 or 4? You don't care, do you? Yeah. And then we did the show, and that was brilliant. And then we went back to doing normal ballet classes, and I was just like, well, what are we doing it for if we're not going to get on stage again? So it's just, I don't know where in my blood, somewhere it came from, but that's what. And it was all I ever wanted to do was perform.
Yeah. So what was the first role that you ever had, your first kind of job in this industry?
I don't know. That's difficult to say, really, because I did, when I was still a child, I did a bit of photographic modelling and that kind of thing. And I was also a member of an amateur troupe called the Numeriques. So I was doing that already when I was kind of, 8 or 9. And then I suppose professionally, again, it's hard to say, because even when I was studying, and I went to dance college initially, and I was still kind of you get odds and sods, little advertisements and so on and so forth that come in, and that's just sort of helping you pay your way. Yeah. And I always wanted, it wasn't just about performing for me, it was also about creating. So when I left dance college, and dance at the time, and back 1,000 years ago, it was really kind of po-faced, it was really serious, and lots of people in brown leotards with pointy face, making very sharp faces and earnest. And it was like that. And to me, I just was always, this amazing machine that we were given, and what can it do? And a lot of it is quite funny. Yeah. And so I wanted to create dance in the way that it made me feel, which was full of joy with a bit of humor and that kind of relationship with your fellow dancers. So I started my own company when, I don't know how young I was then, like 18 or something, and It just wanted to make original work. Yeah. So it was kind of all munged up together, and I just started doing everything I could do as soon as I could.
You must be one of the youngest people ever to start up your own company, because people do that when they're a lot older, I suppose, normally.
Yeah, I was just kind of keen, I just wanted to get going and make stuff, and I had things to express,
Yeah. So how did you first get the job on this television show that people might have heard of called Teletubbies?
Yeah. Well, I was coming to the end of my dance career, and I knew I was in my early 30s, and it gets harder, it's like sooner even than other people. I mean, professional athletes must have to come across the same thing, where you have to face up to the fact that you're just not as good as you used to be, and it's sort of unfair, because you have more worldly wise and everything, and more emotional intelligence, but your body, well, mine certainly, is kind of starting to pack in. And also, to be brutally honest with you, I was really fed up of being dirt poor, because I loved what I was doing dancing, but it didn't it was really difficult. I was on the dole for ages. It was, even though I was working, as you just couldn't make enough money to eat. So I kind of got fed up of that. And I thought, well, I need something else. And I just sort of put out my feelers and just was answering ads and looking in the trades and doing auditions and all of that kind of thing, just looking to see what the next thing might be. Yeah. And there was an advertisement in the stage which said something along the lines of artists with stamina required for a new, they weren't kidding either, for a new children's television program. And then there was this great couple of lines that were people with unusual backgrounds or personalities particularly welcome. Oh. I know, ooh, it is, isn't it? You just think, hello, what do they want? Kind of quirky people. And I thought, well, I'm a kind of quirky person. Who puts that in their advertisement? The sort of person who might actually offer me a job. That's who. So I applied. I can't remember what I wrote, but I wrote off an application, and then I was accepted for audition. And I went and did the audition, and I went and did more. And that was kind of October time. And while they whittled down these hundreds of people who'd applied to just a few. And I think, and around about Christmas, after having been auditioned, as the numbers got fewer and fewer. And then they rang me up just before Christmas and told me that the job was mine if I wanted it.
Wow, that's incredible. Was it quite fun to be in a colourful TV show and have a show that I suppose is not as serious as others to work on because it's for a child audience?
Do you know what was the best thing about being Laa Laa was that it made me have to be all the best things about myself, because and Anne Wood, who ran the company and created the show with Andy Davenport, she was great and she really understood children and had a lot of integrity and love for the viewing child. So she never let us forget that there would be a small child looking at what we were doing and that was who we should focus on. And so in order to engage that child, you had to show them lots of love and be funny and silly. And there was nothing scary in Tubbyland. So you were safe. So it was like all the really good things and none of your paranoia and anger and frustration, all those things about being a proper grown-up human. You put those on the shelf and just be the lovely stuff for a living. So, that was a real joy. And knowing that what you were doing, if it worked properly, was making a little child laugh. And what better way to earn a living, really? No, it was a real treat. Exhausting, but a treat.
Yeah, I take it got pretty hot in those suits if you're in a long shoot, although maybe it's not as hot as it would be if you were filming outside of the UK.
Well, no, it was about as hot as, I mean... pretty blinking hot. And then when we did go to other places during our kind of world tour, Singapore was pretty sticky to be a Teletubby in. But even so, I mean, that was kind of flat. The thing about Tubbyland as well was it was hilly. So you had the heat and you're enclosed and boiling hot and then running up and down hills. It was really, I mean, I'd been a dancer, so I was used to hard physical work, but it's quite a thing.
And I guess I take it a lot of it would have been filmed during the summer months because in the UK, any other months is not good to film outside.
No, that's right. We filmed pretty much from when the clocks go forward to when the clocks go back. I mean, in the early days when we were still a little bit up against it and behind schedule, they'd extend a little bit, but that was basically when we filmed, because apart from anything else, the levels of light, like through the winter, you just don't get the light levels that you need for filming. But I'm really glad that we did it outside in real proper Teletubby land, that our generation of tubs were there for real.
Yeah, and I suppose a lot of people probably don't realise that. They would just assume it's filmed on some soundstage somewhere, but no, it's a real place. I don't think it's there anymore, but it existed.
Yeah, well, it still exists. I mean, it's not been sucked into a weird black hole or void or anything, but it's not Tubbyland anymore. But yes, it's just the same beautiful little bit of Warwickshire countryside that it was.
Yeah. And it's such a globally recognised show as well. I never realised till recently because I had some American guests on who made a Teletubbies reference and I was like, oh, I didn't know you knew about that. And then I was on a foreign airline once and they had Teletubbies on the in-flight entertainment system. So it's so big around the world for such a show that I guess at the time you probably wouldn't have realised how big it was going to be.
No, well, it was huge. It was huge in America. I think at one point, I don't know whether it probably isn't still true, but at one point we were the second most globally successful television show there had ever been.
Wow.
Yeah. And the only one that was more successful than us globally was Baywatch.
Oh, a bit weird.
I know, and we didn't even have to do it in our pants.
Although Teletubbies don't really wear clothes, do they? So
sometimes, actually, but there was one episode where we wore it was about hanging washing on the line, and so they made us like these ludicrous underpants. It's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, that was part of the joy when the scripts would come through that called for all these crazy props and costumes and things, and how brilliant our design department were to make the things that made the whole thing such fun.
Yeah. Because
we spent all summer encased in fur, and also because it was the first time I'd earned a really lovely wage, was that I would go in the winter, I'd go and have a summer holiday in the Southern Hemisphere. And I was in Western Samoa.
Ooh.
Like the tiny little island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right on the other side of the planet. Yeah. And the woman walked into the shop with a Laa Laa rucksack on. And I thought, look at that. We're blinking everywhere.
In situations like that, do you ever think, should I go up and tell them that I am Laa Laa? Or are you a bit more humble, maybe?
Yes, you have to. Well, I like to enjoy it in secret. But the only thing that I would... because it doesn't make any sense as well, like sometimes parents would say to their children, look, this is Laa Laa. Then the child would look and go, this is just a woman. I thought you are right. It doesn't make any sense to them at all. But also, what was I going to say then? Oh, I had another funny point to make and I distracted myself with the mum thing. It's like that. When it was really at the height of Teletubby mania and the toys were so hard to get hold of and stuff like that. And I remember once or twice I'd be like behind a child in Toys R Us or Toys R Me, as I liked to call it at the time. And the child would be there with a kind of Poe in one hand and the Laa Laa in the other hand looking. And I'd lean over when Mummy wasn't looking, go, have Laa Laa. She's the one you love best. Have Laa Laa. But yes, other than that, naughty.
And I guess it's kind of cool to have the anonymity of being a global superstar, but not getting mobbed on the street at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, so many people would say, oh, isn't it a shame that no one knows who you are? Yeah. No. Have you seen? I mean, when the press went mad and they were like following us around and going through our rubbish, and I know. And we're just stupid puppets.
Yeah.
It was so terrifying. I couldn't, why anybody wants to be kind of tabloidy famous, I have no idea. No, I want to show up at work, do my job. Like I say, my main focus was just be lovely for the child, be the child watching, be their friend and that, make them laugh. That's my main focus. Yeah. I don't care about anything. And then on a Friday, I want to go back to my hometown and go to the pub and have a drink and dance to some ska and get on with my life, like a normal person.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think that's the best way.
So did you control the mouth as well, or was that done robotically perhaps by somebody else?
No, we had complete control. So
oh wow.
Mouth was I'm right-handed, so it was simpler to have the mouth, so rubber, and then left hand just eyes blinking all the time. So every time you remembered to do this, so a little bit this, blinking the whole time was, and it became so automatic. I remember in about the 5th year, I'd fallen. I wasn't in Tubbyland. I was at home. Must have been the weekend, and I'd fallen asleep on the couch. And I woke up and I was talking in my sleep, But I was also puppeteering my own mouth with my hand as I was talking in my sleep. I just think, oh my goodness, this is puppeteer insanity.
Yeah. And did they record your voice live on the set as you were doing all the actions and reading the lines, or did you have to kind of do that in a studio later if perhaps it's not good quality picking it up live?
Well, both of those things. And it was a difficult one, to sort out exactly how that was going to be. They tried recording everything we did and then having us go over it at the end of the day. But, by then we were all just knackered because we worked 11 hours a day, and not just us, but everybody else. So the sound people thought, oh, no, we've got to go and do the voiceover. But because what we said inside the head, you also had the good, because they weren't silent. So you had the gadunka, gadunka, gadunka sound of the eyeballs and your mouth going, and then us going, make it stop at the same time. So, but we would record everything, and then we'd go down to Pinewood Studios and have a day where we voice over. They'd play us back the episode with the thing that had been taken at the time. And then we'd revoice it nice and clean in a proper acoustic environment so that it was clear and clean. But what always amazed us was in that process was how absolutely razor sharp our memory of doing it was. So, I mean, at first they used to print out scripts for us, but we didn't need them because we could absolutely remember what it was and what we did. And also because, it's not like, pre-Teletubbies, I did a few jobs where I was lip syncing to a human. And that's a different thing because the human mouth is much more articulate, whereas the tubby mouth is just this. Yeah. So although we were careful puppeteers, and, it was a point of honor that our lip syncing and mouth movement was good, it's not like you had to be as accurate as you would do it with a real face.
Yeah. And I was going to say, before you mentioned all the panting and background noise that you don't really want, that perhaps recording a voice inside a Teletubby head would be quite good acoustic treatment and sort of soundproofing, but I guess that's not the case if you're panicking all the time.
Yeah. And then every time you fall over, it bang! Oh, yeah. We did a lot of falling over.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing. Can you really see properly in those suits?
No, I was worried when I first got the job. I thought, well, will I be able to wear my glasses inside the head? No, there's steam up. How will I be able to see properly? And then when you actually get inside it and you're looking through the mouth, which is like this far away from your eyes and this big. And then over the top of that is the metal that works the eyes and mouth. And then because that is metal and shiny, then over the top of that is a black gauze so that doesn't reflect back to the cameras. So no, I just thought it doesn't really matter whether I wear my glasses or not because I can see naffle as it is. And it would take a couple of days, like every new season when you came back, it would take a couple of days to kind of get your tubby eye in to be able to to see through this kind of not being able to see thing and just know. I mean, basically you kind of go, don't hit any of the purple thing, the green thing and the red thing and try not to stand on the rabbits. And find the lens for the camera. So we had like great big boards, a great big fluorescent orange one for camera one and a big fluorescent yellow one for camera two. So to help us find where the camera was, because that's the most important thing, because you want to be talking to the child. You can't be slightly off. You've got to be bang down the lens. So
I guess that's even harder than normal puppetry, because in television puppetry normally you have a monitor so you can see exactly if you are doing it right, whereas if you're struggling to even see through your own eyes and having to look at the camera, you don't really know how good it is.
I mean, they did try a monitor system with us. Nunu used a monitor system, and the Tots TV, who were Ragdoll's main program before us, they used monitors and they tried it with us, but it's like there's already so much stuff in our heads and it's already like this huge pressure on your neck, and we really don't want any more weight in there. And also because we were wanging around and Velcro, it would fall in your face and all the falling over, it just wasn't practical for us to have a monitor. So we just learned to do it pretty much blind.
And with every successful kids' TV show, a single seems to be released at some point, and that was, of course, Teletubbies Say It Oh, which was kind of a remix of the theme tune with bits added in. Were you surprised that that managed to get to number one?
I don't know that I was really. No, I don't think I was that surprised. I've got a double platinum disc on my wall in the lounge.
Oh, wow.
I know, and I've been a singer as well, desperately trying to get to number one, and then dress up in a stupid fursuit and pa-dang, there you are. The world has funny ways of making your dreams come true sometimes.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I was that surprised. Anne wasn't that keen for them to release it because she wanted it to kind of stay in the child realm and didn't want it to get too usurped by that kind of, the adult irony end of things.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think it was a surprise, really.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what was really funny is I went home one weekend and we'd shot late. It must have been the second year when we were behind because we were still shooting in November.
Yeah.
And I went back and went into my local pub and there was a karaoke evening and there's like 100 drunk people on the stage all singing Say It Oh. Whoa, it's a bit surreal.
Yeah. And that was number one about the week before Christmas or something.
The Spice Girls knocked us off.
Yeah, outrageous. Yeah. Who's ever heard of the Spice Girls? Yeah, and of course they had like 3 in a row, so you could have ruined their record.
Well, we'd ruined Robbie Williams's record thing because we stopped Angels getting to number one. Was Rob. So I guess, pop music had its revenge by the Spice Girls 2 become one, knocking us off. There we are.
And a lot of the time people talk about the son from Teletubbies, the baby, and finding her quite creepy for some reason. And it shows how long it's been since Teletubbies has started. That baby now has a child of her own. Yeah,
I saw that. Yeah, Jess, she was the sound man's or the sound editor.
Oh.
It was his daughter. Fabulous baby. Hey, and I did see the pictures of her new baby, equally as gorgeous as she. But yes, but you're right that people did find it creepy, but the grown-up people found it creepy, but children really love to see themselves reflected back. And I think the makers of the program were aware that although we were aiming at the major content at sort of ages 3 and 4, that there would also be younger children watching. And so she was like a real point of reference. I mean, children love seeing their own faces reflected back and seeing each other on television and other screens. So I think it was quite a wise move. And also it just sort of sent the signal that the child was our God, the child was the thing that we were most, that ruled over Teletubby land, really.
Well, yeah. I think there is a conspiracy theory about that she is the god or something. She's watching over, which makes sense.
Well, it's just that, she's symbolic of the fact that children are the most important thing.
Yeah. And I'm of an age where I'm actually not sure what the answer to this question is. But, sometimes if you draw a picture of the sun and put a smiley face on it, did that originate from Teletubbies or is that predated that?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that myself either. Yeah. I think probably from ancient times, I think people have had faces in the sun. I'm sure there's representations of the sun with faces from way back. And I think probably Teletubbies drew on that ancient iconography and adopted it for the child audience.
Yeah, and I think it's probably strengthened the idea of drawing a face in the sun somehow, because I think from my memory, whenever I did it, I always thought of Teletubbies when I did it.
Yeah, see, I think that's kind of the way round. It's like, I think it's always been there, but now if you do it, there will be a little reminder that it was a Teletubby thing too.
Yeah. And I guess people have always worshipped the sun and stuff, so they see it as a person maybe.
Yeah. I wish it would show up now, frankly. I don't know where you are, but it's been raining on me all day long.
So what did you work on after Teletubbies was finished?
Okay. So from working with Anne and Andy, I became really fascinated in making work for children and how how that actually also reflected with making work for grown-ups. But I wanted to keep working, and also because I thought a lot of the people working at Ragdoll were just incredibly knowledgeable people, full of integrity and creative genius.
Yeah.
So I wanted to stay working for them, and Anne said she would like to have me. So I then worked on a show called Boohbah, which is a very movement-based show. So that was great because I kind of got to revisit my dancing chops, but also with what I'd learned about making stuff for children. And then thereafter, I did the choreography for In the Night Garden. I worked on a few other bits and pieces for Ragdoll for probably the same kind of amount of time as I worked on Teletubbies. It was a long time. Yeah. I continued working for them. And then I'd kind of got myself into a situation where I was directing children a lot, like working with children for the screen. And I stopped enjoying that really, because I really liked working with children, but I found my whole time I was kind of coercing them into doing what I wanted. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to actually just kind of go and hang out with them. So I retrained. I did some education work. I got a bit of an MA in creative education, and I went and worked in schools and learned more about how child brain works and how learning happens and child communication and that kind of thing. And I started making theatre shows again, kind of went back to my theatre roots. And I also trained as a Pilates teacher. So I did that. And I started writing. And I started writing material for children. And I started having my own storytelling show. And I still work, or at least before COVID, I was still working as a children's storyteller. So I still do that with my own material. And I'm still writing. And it just might be that in the next couple of years, my memoir of which actually has just been picked up by a Scottish publisher, so hooray. So that should be out in the next couple of years. That's called Over the Hills and Far Away. So still, even though I've done lots of other and different and varied and other things, Teletubbies is still very much there, even in little ways, even in the fact that my nieces and nephews call me Auntie Laa. Wow. I just went and had lunch with some friends, and yes, and they just went, the tab is Nikki Laa Laa. So I can't get away from it, and I don't really have any particular desire to. I'm very proud of having done it.
Yeah. And how has the pandemic affected your work overall? Because of all industries, the creative and arts has been affected quite a lot by the pandemic. So have you found it pretty hard?
Well, yes, because I had a one-woman theatre show, Nikkipedia, was due to be, the premiere was 28th and 29th of April, I think, last year. So I was in full about to do a new show mode, and then of course that didn't happen. Still hopefully will happen at some point, down chasing it like a fiver down a dusty street, maybe in the spring. And then and everything else, and also because I do quite a lot of I do some teacher training and conference speaking and that kind of thing about child communication, and a lot of that is in Europe. So all of that stopped as well. Yeah, everything stopped. I stopped earning money like that. But on the plus side, I don't know whether the aforementioned memoir would have got written if I hadn't have been.
Oh yeah.
Here you are now. Just spend some time on your own in miles from anywhere. So you have to. Yeah. I've tried not to go too insane, but very difficult. And of course, I feel grateful that I at least had a little bit of money in the bank, that some savings that I could draw on to live on. And, other people didn't have that. So it could have been a lot worse.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of people that have kind of fallen through the gaps here and have been forgotten about in terms of financial support. So it's great to have something that you can live on.
Yes. Exactly. And, when you're on your own and you're not going anywhere, you can live quite frugally. I've eaten a lot of lentils.
Ooh, that's a bit random, but you know.
But they're so cheap. So that, just kind of trying to keep it tidy and live frugally when there's not much money coming in, and wait for it all to sort of start up again. I mean, and there are things starting up, but in a different way. And it's all because people are uncertain, and there's not enough people doing things. I mean, I've had so many kind of, would you like to do this? And I say yes, and they go, great.
Yeah.
Then I don't hear anything else. What happened to that thing that I got asked to do? And then I don't know quite. That seems to be the new trend. I don't know whether people have good ideas and then find out they don't have any money, or if there's not enough people to do it, or if they're still getting around to it, but everything is so incredibly slow that
who knows. And are you one of these people that said they were going to write a book in lockdown and has actually been true to their word?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's me. I don't muck about. If I say I'm going to do it, I do it.
Yeah, a lot of people have just said, I'm going to write a book and learn 7 languages and I'm going to make a film in lockdown, but then they actually just ate loads of pizza and watched Netflix, which is probably a lot more fun maybe sometimes, but people can do what they want.
Yeah, well, I didn't eat a lot of pizza because I didn't, where I was locked down, I didn't have a proper oven. But I ate a lot of lentils. I suppose... Yeah, I drank a fair amount of wine. I did a lot of walking.
Yeah.
I wrote a book.
Yeah.
That was very good. I kept up my fitness, super fit. So yeah, it could have been a lot worse all round, really. Don't have Netflix. Read a lot of books. Read really a lot of books, and that was great for a writer to have time to do a lot of reading. Was fantastic. So, yes, there were things to be grateful for, but always just, I think for me, the thing that I'm going to find hardest to shrug off is the feeling that you can't have the awful cloud of death, and just feeling like, let's go out and have some fun. That doesn't feel very easy for me because it's just such a massive human tragedy. And I find it very difficult to get through that. To let's all go and have a party, really, while all those people are dying. I find that quite difficult to cope with. So I think usually I can have fun on the tiny piece of blue tack, but I find that's kind of lost me. I've lost that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess a lot of people are feeling like that. And also, some people feel scared to admit that they've actually quite enjoyed not having anything to do.
Well, I think for me, it was the relief of pressure.
Yeah.
Like the pressure that you must do this, you must do this, you must do that, whether from other people or whether from yourself, you've got to do this and you've got to achieve and you've got to keep going, you've got to do. That it was quite nice just to take the foot off that a little bit. And yes, still write a book, but yes, just for not to have the expectation, I think. Yeah. That to lower your expectations about what life is and can be, and that it is kind of nice to just, take a step back.
Yeah. Now, in the last few years or so, there's been a kind of reboot of Teletubbies. Were you ever asked to reprise your role as Laa Laa, or were you not really interested in coming back after all the years?
Well, apart from my poor old knees might not have stood up for it. Well, very fortunately, I was very much involved with the reboot of the new Teletubbies. When Daryl McQueen, who was a production company that have produced the reboot, they got in touch with me quite early on. I think they got their name from our series producer, Sue James. And she said, yes, you need to get Nikky Smedley. She knows everything about Teletubbies. And so I went and I worked a little bit with the writer and the director and just sort of about the theory and the philosophy of Tubbies. And really nice. And I was there for the casting, for the auditions of the new crew. And what was really lovely was that Rebecca and Nick, who play Laa Laa and Dipsy in the rebooted version, I'd worked with them before because they were Iggle Piggle and Upsy Daisy. in the night garden. So I'd already trained them up once for that when I worked on that. So it was kind of nice. And because it was such an odd and weirdly emotional thing. Like the first time I saw Rebecca getting into my Laa Laa and realizing, because I'd always had this bit, I am the Laa, and you just take it for granted. Anytime you saw an image of Laa Laa, that was me. And then that shifted. And that was I didn't expect to feel that emotional about it.
Yeah.
But I really did. I was really like, oh my God, I'm going to cry because I'm saying goodbye to something. It was like passing on a child. It was really weird.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, that was 6 years of life, sort of being that thing. So, but my point was, I couldn't have asked for anybody better to hand Laa over to than Rebecca. I mean, not to say anything, not to be disparaging towards Jeremiah and Rochelle, who were Tinky Winky and Poe, but I just didn't have the history with them. So then I went and worked with them right at the beginning on their performance of the new Tubbies, with their performances, and did a lot of the choreography for that show. And until they took their stabilizers off, and then I wasn't needed anymore.
Yeah. And I take it the sadness isn't really a feeling of bitterness or anything. It's just sort of a child leaving home kind of feeling.
Yeah, it was, like a kind of nostalgia and loss and pride, all sort of mixed up in one. And then I suppose aging. Also bundled up in there as well. That kind of, just when the passing of time and the next generation, that sort of, that whole thing.
And I suppose it's good that Teletubbies is being introduced to a new generation, even though I think there's probably been repeats, but I guess there will be new messages and morals that are relevant to the 2021 age.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. And then there's also some things about children that don't change, that are just the same.
For sure. Well, if we're interested in keeping up with you, do you have any social media or a website where we can find you?
Yeah, I do. Probably the best one, but on Facebook, I have a page called Nickipedia, which is at Nickipedia111. That is a good way of keeping up to date with me, and will hopefully tell you when my show is out. And I've fallen out with Twitter. I don't really do that anymore. And on the educational child communication side, I have a website called How to Speak Child. And that has a monthly blog on it. It's been going for a long time, so there's a lot of material on that. And then there's also my the storyteller.me.uk, Nikky Smedley, the Storyteller, which is, gives you lots of information about my storytelling. Keep your eyes open for the Over the Hills and Far Away memoir coming out next year.
Looking forward to that. That sounds very exciting.
Is it time for Tubby bye-bye?
I guess it is. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show today. It's very nice of you to take the time to talk all about Teletubbies.
I like your Muppet picture behind you, by the way.
Thank you. I like your assortment of ornaments there.
As yet unbroken.
Oh, yeah.